All right, everyone, it's that time of month. We're going to sit down and go through a whole bunch of monthly candlesticks. So grab a coffee or a water or a tea and sit down and let's go. Now, for you guys who are just day traders and you're like, oh, what do I care about monthly candlesticks? I look at, I swing trade something for a couple days or I hold something for a couple weeks. This is something that a friend of mine, JC at All Star Charts, has convinced me to do a long time ago. It takes a few minutes once a month. You go through everything from a monthly point of view, and it really kind of, pulls you back and you get to see the whole forest instead of just a couple trees. So I highly recommend, if you're already trying to click that off button because, hey, it's monthly candlesticks, don't. Right? Let's just take a few minutes here. Let's zoom out. Let's see what's going on in a lot of these indices and the overall markets. And again, that zoom out, I think, is very, very important. Just once a month, just to kind of see, hey, this is what's going on. So I'm gonna make that bigger, like that. Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin from a monthly chart always looks crazy, from $2 up to 57,000. Now Bitcoin, everyone's freaking out that it's selling off, and I talked about the fact that I thought there'd be some resistance up here. Turned out that it was to be the case, but zoom out on the monthly time frame and you take a look at this and you say, well, okay, right? It's done all of this, and now this sell-off doesn't look so insanely bad. It could sell back to a couple key anchored view apps that I want to draw in, and I think everything is still 100% fine. We have the anchored view app from the previous all-time highs. That's coming in around 34. We have this anchored view app from this, call it like the FTX low or whatever you want to. That's coming up around 36. So we've got this 34 to 36 that, hey, this could be a level for Bitcoin to pull into and to chill out at. It could rest far before that, of course, but we could be pulling in just a little bit here on Bitcoin. Let me actually size that up, and I'm going to bring this one over, make sure that's good. Perfect. I'll go back to here. So again, it gives us a, hey, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be when I'm looking at some of these other charts, right? Now, Ethereum, I've talked about this a bunch. Ethereum failed to even get to the all-time highs. So we're still seeing this relative weakness in Ethereum over everything else. If we look at something like Solana, Solana, same thing, big move up. So from a percentage basis, from its lows, much stronger than Bitcoin, but was unable to claim that all-time highs. So in the crypto market, it seems like Bitcoin's king. It seems like this pullback, if we just go back to Bitcoin, this seems healthy to me, right? This doesn't seem insanely bearish, something I have to worry about. But when you go into like the daily chart, it does look kind of bad. So it's good, again, to zoom out and say, oh, we have to be cautious. It doesn't mean I'm going to buy here on the daily chart because I think the intraday chart could do something. It just means that when I look at the monthly chart, I'm like, okay, this is normal. And it wouldn't be shocking to see another month or two of a pullback before things take off. Could we be looking at something like back here, right? We had this massive run up. We had a little bit of a tiny red month, which we have a little bit of a tiny red month here. And then we had a pretty big sell-off, and then we bounced back up. And it could be the same thing where, hey, we ran up. It's time for some of these guys to take some profits. So maybe that happens, right? We broke down here. This is a 30-minute chart now. So we broke down here a little bit ago, and we've just kind of been chopping here ever since. But when we zoom out, right, again, it doesn't look that bad. And this is kind of the point, I think, that you'll see with a lot of this stuff. If we go to the dollar index, DXY, last month, I'm recording this on the 1st. So these little candles right here, we're going to ignore, and we're going to focus on these guys, right? So these big candles. So we had a big push up in the dollar index, but that gets us right to this prior high. So are we going to see a little bit of a reversal in the dollar index? We're up 4 months in a row. If we do get a pullback in the dollar index, I think that would be bullish for stocks. At least that's been the correlation as of late. If we look at the euro, it's going to look the opposite of this because the dollar index has a lot of euro in it. But we're down 4 months in a row. We're down to this anchored VWAP from the all-time lows. maybe it's time that we have a little bit of a bounce in the euro. And that would cause a big change, I think, in a lot of these currencies that have been pretty heavily shorted for a long time. Like the Aussie, for example, has been pretty heavily shorted, had a nice pop up the last few days, and is pulling down now into this anchored VWAP. So I'm looking to buy some Aussie if I can get a hold of it at a good price or a good setup. But looking at the monthly chart, we have this declining wedge, or a downward triangle, whatever you want to call it. We're getting tight in the apex of this triangle. We have a big support area here on the monthly chart. So maybe we have a little bit of a pop up through here. Again, I love doing this because now that kind of says, okay, the Aussie is heavily shorted. The dollar is at resistance. I'm seeing this pattern. These are all on monthly charts. I'm not going to make trades based off of these. But when I zoom in to a daily chart, or I zoom into 4-hour chart, which is something that I trade a lot of, now we're talking about, okay, now I'm going to wait for setups in this area in the direction of that monthly kind of time frame. Can't go over currencies without talking about the yen. Absolute insane month. Last month just rocketed right through resistance. This had been resistance now 3 times. This resolved higher. If this reverses quickly this month, that could be an overall bull trap, and we could push lower. We did see some intervention on the yen recently, so that could cause that. If we zoom way out, now we're going back to 1990. Pretty important levels here on dollar yen. Gold, have to go over gold, XAU USD. So a nice breakout in gold here, 2 months up in a row, and a big topping tail here in gold last month. So this month, it looks like we're starting to retrace that, but a big topping tail there. So what I'm seeing in a closer term chart on gold is just this sideways consolidation, which it would make sense if you see a monthly candle that looks like this, then it means that there was some big selling in that area. That's what those wicks mean. And we have to battle in those areas. If we end up taking the top of that wick out, that looks great, because there's, generally speaking, going to be a lot of stops on shorts on the high of that wick. But when we're trading inside this wick, to me, that's kind of choppy action. So if I'm going to be continuing to trade gold and from the long side, which I've been doing for a while now, ever since we had this breakout a couple months ago, I know that, hey, the monthly chart is showing me there could be some choppy action. So I want to be buying dips. I want to be selling rips. I want to be trading as opposed to just kind of buying and holding for trends. Now, let's pop over to trade ideas and let's look at, and again, we're 1 day into the month, so we need to make sure that we're looking at this candle. But we have the SMH. Now I want to start with the SPY here. We have the SPY in through here. And we had a little bit of a pullback month. Now, what's kind of worrisome to me is it looks a little bit like this month right here, where you had a tiny green candle, and then you had this engulfing month. You had a tiny green candle and an engulfing month. Does that mean that we're going to sell off, and it's time to move lower? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that, but it could, right? So what I want to watch for is we had this anchored VWAP from this major bear market low right here. We bounced when we came back and we held that. That created this last, 6 months of a rally that was amazing. Are we going to come back into that anchored VWAP again? Right now, that anchored VWAP actually lines up with these prior highs. That gets us 477 on the SPY, which is a pretty disastrous down move. If you're a long-only investor, for me, doesn't really matter. So that's just something I want to watch. If we are going to do that, it would mean taking out the low of the prior candle. And that is, if I go into the daily chart, that's this zone that I've drawn in here. You can see support here and resistance up here. The way I'm looking at it, as long as we are within this zone right here, there's really nothing for me to do other than to look for revision to the mean plays. If you're subscribed to the Substack, then I'm going to release a product soon that has a couple of algos that I'm running, one of which is a anchored VWAP pullback algo. That's something I think I'm going to be leaning on heavily in this market while we kind of chop around this particular range right here. let's just go down the cap scale a bit. So what I mean by this, if you're new, SPY is your big companies. MDY here is your middle of the road companies. You can see relative weakness in these smaller companies. It actually came down and tagged this breakout area. If we go down to IWM, which is our smaller guys, oops, IWM, you can see relative weakness to IWM. We never got back to these highs. So the big guys led the charge and continue to lead the charge. The medium guys and the small guys are suffering a little bit here as well. A couple things I want to look at. Uranium. So uranium had a nice, it held last month. It had a pretty ugly candle, but we're still holding this, call it $26 on uranium area. As long as we continue to hold that, I think it's building a bullish picture. We now have like 5-6 months in a row of just sideways action after this breakout. You could call this, a little cup. Maybe we're building a handle here and then we're going to push higher potentially. That's one thing I'm watching there in uranium. I wanted to look at KRE. So this is the banking crisis candle right here. We've bounced and we're kind of putting in a little bit of a nice orderly pullback here on URA or KRE. So if this pullback continues, that's something that if we get a breakout this month, so that would be above last month's and the months before that high. If we get a breakout of that, I'm going to watch the regional banks for that because that might signal the all clear from here. And we might start to finally move higher. Full disclosure, I always like to say I still do have some KRE around that $40 that I talked about a long time ago. XLV or healthcare. Healthcare is pulling back. Healthcare was relatively strong all throughout this range right here, which was that inflation or Russia, Ukraine bear market, whatever you want to call it. Held on very well, just chopping sideways here, broke out, has come back to test that. If we start to get a push up here in XLV, then that's going to be a good sector, I think, to take a look at. XME, which is our metals and mining, massive topping tail here as well. So that's going to correspond with the gold topping tail. Could be signaling to us that the metals across the board could be in for a chop fest. That could mean silver pulling back. Some of these metals that haven't been doing as well could start to underperform. So something I definitely do want to watch. And last but not least, we have to talk about MSOS because it had this massive spike yesterday that I know everybody is talking about. But again, the whole forest for the trees thing, zooming out, you can see what may be occurring here on MSOS. So again, I did my video and Substack and blog post on stage analysis recently and talked about how the different stages of the market where you have stage 1, which is accumulation, then generally stage 2 uptrend, and then you have these stage 3, which is topping, and then stage 4 decline. So the real question, the $1 million question right now in these stocks is, has this been stage 3 decline or stage 4 decline, and now we're in stage 1? And are we breaking out of stage 1? That's the real question, because we could chop in here for years and years. But really, if you look at it, we kind of have been. So this is 2022, and now we are mid-2024, and we've just been moving completely sideways with could be putting in this kind of rounded bottom. If that's the case, and we can start going over this candle's high right here, again, it may be time for MSOS. I was talking about this wedge right here on the weekend video. Again, make sure you're going to stats@trading.com. You're signing up for the email list there so I can email these and you don't miss them. But I was talking about this. I had a stop limit order somewhere around here that got triggered. To be honest, I scalped out most on yesterday just because it was, I think, the biggest day ever for MSOS, and I'm not going to look at that gift horse in the mouth. Pulling back a little bit here today. Again, I think these prior highs are keys. This would be that last monthly high on the monthly candle. If we can retake that, I think we may be onto something in the marijuana sector, as potentially has broken out of this stage 1 accumulation and could be potentially trending. Do I ever think it's going to get way back to here? No. I think that was an overhyped rally, but it's at $10 right now. If it comes up to $20 and falls apart again, right? That's all I need for a great trade. So I hope everyone appreciates these monthly wrap-ups, because I certainly do. So again, like, subscribe, comment, all of those things. Make sure you're going over to statsedgetrading.com, signing up for the email list, the free trading course, or if you want help with building a trading plan, there's that course there for you as well. Thank you guys very much. I will talk to you later.